Welcome to Wrapping Your Head Around Next Generation 911 and GIS, a tour of URISA resources. I'm Matt Gerike, and Hillary Palmer and I today will be guiding you through several of the different resources that URISA offers related to Next Generation 911 and GIS. URISA's Next Generation 911 Task Force is made up of URISA members working to support and educate GIS professionals about Next Generation 911 and Next Generation 911 GIS in particular. Our goals are focused on providing honest, vendor-agnostic information and education, including the ways that Next Generation 911 standards encourage good professional practice and facilitate GIS collaboration between organizations. As part of the education programming, we reach out to organizations and jurisdictions across the country and encourage them to share their experiences working towards and implementing Next Generation 911 GIS, including addressing. URISA's Next Generation 911 Task Force supports and educates GIS professionals about Next Generation 911 through webinars, panels, fact sheets, workshops, and more. This presentation is for those just starting to learn more about NG911, discusses key NG911 GIS concepts, requirements, and recommendations, with a tour of available resources. Topics include geospatial call routing, required GIS data layers, and organizational considerations.
So here is the index of our tour of NG911 resources. They're all organized by resource type. This may seem like an intimidating list, but don't worry, we're going to go through it all in a way that will help you build up steam over the course rather than slowing you down on this journey. So let's get started. Welcome to our first stop, where we'll be laying the sturdy foundation before building other knowledge. Our geospatial fact sheet from November of 2018 was recently updated again in 2021. It's a super helpful resource for building basic knowledge about addressing in general. It answers those common questions of why is addressing important? What other activities affect addressing? Who is the standards setting authority for addresses, and how is URISA involved? Even if you already know the answers to these questions, you might still find it helpful to keep a copy of this fact sheet handy in case a manager or elected representative becomes interested in your role within the organization. If you really like foundations, URISA also has a full-day workshop on addressing and address management. Next, okay, on our road trip, we're getting up to speed with standards and acronyms and statutes. Oh my! Next Generation 911 is a complex pool to dive into. These resources explain the broader Next Generation 911 effort, highlight the role that GIS plays in NG911 geospatial call routing, and introduces what you will need to know with your GIS data to get there. Check out our Next Generation 911 fact sheet from June of 2019 to learn why NG911 is important to the GIS community, and it also provides some links to best practices documents and references. Our recorded Next Generation 911 What GIS Professionals Need to Know is actually how I discovered the URISA NG911 Task Force and joined the team shortly thereafter. I always share this video presented by Rachel Rodriguez and Melissa Liebert to every new addressing person that I hear of. And I've also used it to brief upper management and elected officials. Our NG911 and the GIS Workflow Workshop is also a helpful resource for anyone who's wondering how it all fits together.
Next up, we have a series of resources discussing the path of programmatic decisions that each jurisdiction, GIS and 911, will make to create their own path to an NG911 implementation. Some of these decisions will be similar to what neighboring jurisdictions are doing. Some will be totally unique and highly customized to meet the needs and circumstances in your region. That's okay. Check out our fact sheet called Moving Forward with NG9-1-1 from January 2021. It helps you answer the questions of how to move through the process of implementing NG9-1-1, how to overcome common obstacles, how to estimate level of effort, and how to set your scope and timeline.
This is actually one of my favorite webinars where you hear NG9-1-1 implementation perspectives from 3 different states. Matt talks about Virginia's approach, Megan Compton shares Indiana's story, and Sherry Massey tells us how Kansas is doing. This is a great, candid conversation that really showcases how different the NG9-1-1 process is from state to state. Okay, our next stop is kind of more like an obstacle course where we will help you navigate the potholes and blind turns through the structure of data models and strategies. When your path forward becomes clear, then it's time to get in the weeds with your GIS data schema by comparing it to the national standards. Our fact sheet on GIS data layers for NG9-1-1 and what they do, written April 2021, will help you understand just that. It identifies the data sets and explains their functions, so you will know where to prioritize your efforts. Our workshop called Unpacking the NENA NG9-1-1 GIS Data Model is another helpful deep dive into the data model itself. Next, we have a 2-part webinar series from 2021 called Roadmap for Implementing NG9-1-1 GIS Data Model. And part 1 of that 2-part webinar series focuses on those required data layers that are polygons. So the PSAT boundary, emergency service boundaries, and those provisioning boundaries. Part 2 of the webinar series focuses on road center lines and site structure address points. Both are extremely helpful and give tons of tips and tricks for successfully implementing the NG9-1-1 GIS data model. I was honored to co-present part 2 with Melissa Liebert, and I may or may not have quoted Clint Eastwood as Dirty Harry in that presentation. You'll just have to watch and find out. All right, and this stop on our tour to 911 URISA resources is more like an oil change. These resources will help you learn how to manage and maintain your data moving forward. Not everyone needs to change their local schema. Many use extract, transform, and load tools, or ETL, to prepare data for NG9-1-1 systems. Almost everyone has something unique about their data, and they will need to adapt workflows while still complying with the standard. This webinar by Matt and Jeff Ledbetter about the ETL process is my absolute favorite. Matt does something really brave when he gives a live demo of using automation in ArcGIS Pro. Be warned, his audio cuts out midway through, which must have been so traumatic as a presenter, Matt, but rest assured he gets it fixed very quickly and continues on, so hang in there for the whole webinar. It's worth it. Also, finding out where your jurisdictional provisional boundaries meet up and do or do not align with neighboring jurisdictions raises questions about data stewardship. For an in-depth conversation about data stewardship, check out our Ask the Experts panel recording.
And now, the finish line is in sight, at least for this presentation. Let's take a look at the road ahead. NG9-1-1 standards are in stable versions, but new versions are always being developed, and more versions are on the timeline after those. Cheryl Benjamin and Deb Roseboom do a great job explaining how NENA workgroups function and work together to keep everything aligned and moving forward in the same direction, in addition to giving us a preview of version 2 of the GIS data model in this recorded webinar. Learning more about the impact of those proposed revisions to the CLDXF standard with this resource, Impact of Proposed Revisions to NENA's Civic Location Data Exchange Standard. Be on the lookout for updated versions of the NENA GIS Stewardship Information Document and 3D GIS Requirements Document. URISA members participate in both of these work groups and help the next generation 911 ecosystem and the important role that GIS plays move forward. URISA's Addressing Conference resumed in February 2022 as URISA's Location, Enterprise Addressing, and Public Safety, or LEAP, virtual conference with 2.5 days of content related to address governance, administration and management, addressing for public safety and NG9-1-1, addressing as a collaborative and as business process, and enterprise address data, or the vision of one version of your addressing truth for all of your business needs. We plan to continue an annual LEAP conference, as well as have a series of presentations at GIS Pro each fall. All of these resources and information about future events are on the URISA website. Be sure to visit the pages on webinars, workshops, geospatial fact sheets, and podcasts to learn more about many other technical and professional development topics shared by URISA members, task forces, and committees. Visit the NG9-1-1 task force page if you would like a more curated list of the NG9-1-1 resources.
And to learn more about how you can get involved in the task force, please reach out to leadership and members, including 2021 through 2022 Chair Melissa Liebert, Rachel Rodriguez, Catherine Cargo, Deb Rosaboom, myself, Hillary Palmer, Dan Miller, Carrie Brennan, Ian Von Essen, Jeff Ledbetter, Matt Gerike, Bert Simpson, and many others. Any of the task force members or URISA Executive Director Wendy Nelson should be able to include you on our collaborative space using Podio, and you'll become automatically invited to our monthly calls, which occur on the second Tuesday of the month at 8 a.m. Pacific, 11 a.m. Eastern. Volunteers are needed to support addressing and NG9-1-1 LEAP conference planning and execution, developing more helpful fact sheets, planning webinar content, workshops, as well as collaborating and best practices documents.
Thank you for attending, wrapping your head around Next Generation 911 and GIS. We hope that you found some resources that may be helpful for you in your own NG9-1-1 and GIS journey. If you'd like to discuss the topics covered here or the resources in more detail, feel free to reach out to us or continue to monitor URISA web pages and social media channels to stay up to date on the newest available resources. Thank you.
Thank you.